right, so today we are diving deep, into John Brooks's business adventures.
Oh, a classic.
It is, right. Like, I feel like
Mhm.
everyone, recommends this book, and it's for good reason.
Yeah.
It's not just, like your typical business book with like all the numbers and, like the dry stuff.
Right.
It's really about the people and the drama that goes on behind all these major financial events and just like everyday business decisions.
Yeah, he's got a real knack for storytelling, that's for sure.
Yes. He really brings that human element to light.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we're going to be looking at the 62 flash crash,
Oh, yeah.
the Edsel fiasco,
Oh, boy.
insider trading with the Texas Gulf sulfur case. I mean,
Yeah, it's a wild ride.
it is a wild ride. So, are you ready to dive into like the thick of it?
Oh, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with the 1962 stock market crash.
Yeah.
Brooks, he doesn't just give us like all the numbers, but he really I don't know, he creates this really vivid picture of the feeling on Wall Street at the time. Oh, yeah, the panic, the uncertainty.
Right. Imagine being one of those brokers, like on the floor and,
The ticker tape's bomb.
yeah, the ticker tape is like way behind and just like the phones are ringing off the hook.
And then the margin calls start coming in.
Oh, man, those margin calls. Right. Like first thing in the morning, you're getting hit with that.
Yeah, talk about a wake-up call.
Right. Really emphasizes just how quickly things can change in the financial world.
Oh, absolutely. 1 minute you're riding high, the next, you're staring at potential ruin.
And Brooks, he mentions this statistic. I don't know if this is,
Yeah.
if this rings a bell, but like 1 out of every 4 stocks had fallen, like 50 to 60% from their peak just a year before.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder, like I don't know how fragile things really are.
Oh. So, we go from this market and like free fall. Let's talk about another kind of crash and burn, the Edsel.
Oh, the Edsel.
This car is like the poster child for what not to do in business.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
And what's so fascinating about it is that like Ford really, they went all in on this car.
Oh, yeah, they were convinced it was going to be a hit.
Like they were recruiting dealerships like crazy. They had like this massive marketing campaign planned.
It was going to be their crown jewel, the next big thing.
Yeah, like they were really, really confident.
Yeah.
And then the Edsel debuted, and
Well, let's just say it didn't quite live up to the hype.
no, it did not. Brooks, he actually compares the Edsel's front grille
Oh, yeah.
to a de Kooning woman, which
Not exactly a selling point for most car buyers.
no, not at all. And the Edsel had all sorts of mechanical issues too, like oil leaks and hoods that wouldn't open.
They even had dashboards catching fire, if you can believe it.
I know, right? It's almost comical, except for Ford. It wasn't like a laughing matter.
No, it was a disaster.
What Ford did with the Edsel, or really what they didn't do, is they didn't listen to their customers. They were so caught up in their own vision that they failed to see, nobody really wanted this car.
Yeah, they were blinded by their own excitement, you could say.
And they even tried to save it with these kind of desperate slogans like, the Edsel is a success. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, how could we forget?
And it is a new idea, a you idea on the American road.
They were really grasping at straws there.
Yeah, they were. It's almost painful to even think about. So speaking of high-stakes situations, let's move on to the Texas Gulf sulfur case and the world of insider trading.
Oh, yeah, this is a juicy one.
It really is. So it's 1959, and we're in the wilds of northern Ontario, and this geophysicist, Kenneth Dark,
Right.
discovers this massive deposit of copper and zinc.
I mean, we're talking potentially one of the biggest ore finds in decades.
Huge. Right. So Dark, he stumbles upon this treasure trove, and what does he do? He starts quietly buying up stock options in Texas Gulf sulfur.
Of course.
And maybe, just maybe, he tips off a few friends.
A friend in need is a friend indeed.
Yeah, but the company, Texas Gulf Sulfur, they're trying to keep all of this under wraps.
At least until they can secure those land rights.
Right. This is top secret stuff. Brooks, he describes this whole atmosphere of rumors and this, this frenzy as people are trying to figure out what's going on.
And the stock price is just creeping up and up.
Right. And then Texas Gulf Sulfur, they issue this press release to try and like calm everybody down, but
And it
instead,
just throws fuel on the fire.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting.
and that's where we'll leave it for now, but don't worry, we'll be diving back into the Texas Gulf Sulfur case in just a bit.
See, the thing about this case is, like, it really changed how everyone thought about insider trading, you know?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because before Texas Gulf Sulfur, the rules were, I don't know, kind of vague.
Yeah.
It was like everyone knew what was going on, but nobody really wanted to, like, define it.
Right.
But this case, it forced the courts to finally say, like, okay, this is what material, non-public information actually means, you know?
So like give me an example. Like what would that look like in like the real world?
Okay, so say like your neighbor is, I don't know, some big executive at like Apple or something.
Right.
And you overhear them talking about like this amazing new product that's going to like blow everyone away.
Yeah.
And then like you go and buy a ton of Apple stock before the news comes out.
Oh, okay. So you're using that like that inside information to like get ahead.
Exactly. And that's insider trading, plain and simple. Texas Gulf Sulfur, that case like made that crystal clear.
Wow. It's amazing how like one case can have such a big impact.
Yeah.
So, we've gone from like the drama of this like, stock market crash
Yes.
to the, I don't know, the kind of like sneaky world of insider trading, and now Brooks, he takes us into like this whole other world, which is taxes,
No, yeah, the tax code.
which like might not sound as exciting,
Right.
but it's actually like super fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you look at how it's structured,
Yeah, because on the one hand, it's supposed to be fair, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone pays their fair share.
Right.
But then you have all these loopholes, and Brooks really gets into how these loopholes, they often end up benefiting like the wealthy the most.
Yeah, Brooks gives a few examples like the oil depletion allowance.
Oh, yeah, that one's a head scratcher.
Like, I don't even really understand how it works.
Well, it's complicated, but basically you invest in an oil well,
Okay.
and then for every barrel of oil that comes out of the ground, you get to deduct a certain amount from your taxes.
Even if they've like already made their money back, right?
Exactly. So it's like a bonus, just for being wealthy enough to invest in an oil well in the first place.
It's like the rich get richer kind of thing. And then like what about those rules about deducting entertainment facilities? Like, come on.
Oh, yeah, the yachts and the private jets.
Yeah. How is that even like a thing?
Well, apparently, if you can prove that you're using your yacht for business purposes,
Come on.
then you can write it off on your taxes. Brooks, he's got this great line about how it's like these guys are like meticulously tracking their business time versus their pleasure time on their yachts.
That's too funny.
I know, right? But the thing is, it's not really funny because it shows how like the system is kind of rigged, Like you need a team of lawyers and accountants just to figure out all the loopholes.
Like the complexity is a loophole.
Exactly. So yeah, taxes, maybe not as exciting as like a stock market crash,
Right.
but just as important, I think, in terms of understanding like how business really works.
Yeah, for sure. So we've gone from like high finance to like tax law. What's next?
Well, now we're going to dive into the world of xerography.
Oh, Xerox.
Yeah. Remember what it was like before photocopiers?
I mean, I've heard stories, but like I can't even imagine.
It was rough, man, like hand copying everything.
Oh, I'd go crazy.
Yeah, it was the worst. But then Xerox comes along with this like revolutionary technology. And suddenly making copies is like easy and cheap.
And Brooks, he calls Xerox like the most spectacular big business success of the entire 1960s.
Yeah, they completely changed the game.
It's amazing how like one invention can like change the world.
Yeah, and it wasn't just about convenience either.
Right, because Xerox, it brought with it a whole other set of problems.
Oh, yeah, whole Pandora's box.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, for one thing, it made it way easier to like break copyright laws.
Oh, right, because now you could just like copy anything.
Exactly. Authors, artists, publishers, their work could be copied endlessly and they wouldn't see a dime.
It's like the downside of innovation.
Yeah, it's like every time we have like this big technological leap forward, we also create all these new problems.
Right, it's like we're constantly playing catch up.
Yeah, and these are problems we're still dealing with today, in the digital age.
That's a good point. The Xerox story, it's like it's still relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like it makes you think, right? Like all these unintended consequences
Yeah, for sure.
from like something like a copy machine.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of unintended consequences, Brooks, he also dives into this like this crazy price-fixing scandal at General Electric.
Oh, GE. Yeah.
You wouldn't think a company like that, so big, so well-known, would be involved in something like that, but
Right, you'd think they'd have it all together.
you'd think so. But Brooks, he paints a very different picture.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He talks about how, like, the communication within the company was so bad
Oh, wow.
that executives, they were basically breaking the law without even realizing it.
Wait, seriously? How is that even possible?
Well, Brooks, he uses this term degrees of communication. And basically what he means is that, like, orders would come down from the top,
Right.
but by the time they, like, filtered down to the people actually doing the work,
Yeah.
the message had gotten all, I don't know, distorted.
Oh, so like a big game of telephone.
Exactly. And Brooks, he gives this example of this one executive, Jin, I think his name was.
Okay.
And Jin, he'd been told, like, specifically by his boss, don't fix prices, that's illegal.
Right.
But then, like, he's getting all these other messages from higher-ups, like, praising the idea of stable prices.
Oh, boy.
And basically saying that his boss, he's old-fashioned, he doesn't get it.
So it's like, what's Jin supposed to do?
Exactly. He's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
It's a recipe for disaster, really.
It really is, and it just goes to show, even in these, like, big, successful companies,
Right.
things can go wrong, and sometimes it's not even intentional.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like a system failure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the stock market crash to insider trading to the pitfalls of corporate culture.
Yeah. Brooks really takes us on a journey.
He does. And we end on this like really interesting story of David Lilienthal.
Oh, yeah, a fascinating guy.
Tell me a little bit about him.
So Lilienthal, he's interesting because he starts out in public service.
Okay.
He was actually the head of the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Oh, wow. That's a big deal.
Yeah, a huge New Deal agency, focused on bringing electricity to rural America.
Right.
And Lilienthal, he's driven by this, like, the sense of purpose,
He wants to make a difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, and this is where it gets interesting, he leaves public service and goes to work on Wall Street.
Wow. Quite a change.
Right. And eventually, he makes a fortune.
So, like, how does he reconcile those two sides of himself?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And Brooks, he doesn't really give us an answer, but he does give us these glimpses into Lilienthal's mind
Okay.
through his journals.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we see Lilienthal wrestling with his conscience, questioning his motives.
It's like he's trying to figure out, like, what really matters.
Exactly. And I think that's what Brooks wants us to do too,
Yeah, like, what are our values and what are we willing to do to succeed?
Exactly. Brooks reminds us that business, it's not just about numbers.
Right, it's about people.
Exactly. People with dreams and flaws and morals and everything in between.
And I think that's what makes Business Adventures such a great book.
Yeah.
It's like these stories, they're not just about business, they're about, like, the human condition.
Oh, absolutely.
And on that note, we are out of time, but I hope this deep dive into Business Adventures has given you, the listener, a lot to think about.
Yeah, me too. Brooks' work is just as relevant today as it was, like, 50 years ago.
For sure, it really makes you look at the world of business in a whole new light.
It does.
All right, folks, until next time.